Today, we're going to dig into a really fascinating, kind of backwards idea, the cost paradox. It's this concept that your smallest, cheapest, earliest decisions are actually the ones that have the biggest, heaviest impact on your final budget. It sounds totally wrong, I know, but it's the secret behind everything from building a house to making billion-dollar corporate bets.
So let's jump right in. Imagine for a second that you're about to build your dream house. What do you think the single most important decision is? Is it the fancy kitchen appliances, the perfect paint color, the style of the front door? You might be surprised to hear it's none of those things. Not even close.
We're going to use this dream house project as our guide. You'll see it's the perfect real-world way to unpack a really powerful principle that applies to pretty much everything, from your own life all the way up to massive industrial projects.
So when you build a house, it basically breaks down into 5 key stages. First, you have to figure out the location and the type of house. Then you move on to a rough conceptual sketch, which leads to a super detailed architectural project, and only then do you actually start, building the thing.
Now think about this. What do those first 2 steps actually cost you? Deciding on a neighborhood, or if you want a cozy 2-bedroom versus a sprawling 5-bedroom. It costs basically nothing. A little bit of time on Google, maybe a few chats, but the impact? Oh, the impact is huge. Those 2 free decisions can lock in almost half the total cost of your entire project before you've spent a single penny on a blueprint.
And this right here brings us to the very heart of the matter, the big cost paradox. It's this strange place where your ability to influence the final cost and the actual money you're spending are literally moving in opposite directions. It works like this. Your early decisions, the cheap, easy ones, have a massive impact on the final bill. And your late decisions, picking out light fixtures while the expensive construction is already happening, they barely move the needle on the overall budget. It's totally flipped from what you'd expect, right? This chart just lays it all out perfectly. Look at these 2 bars. The one on the left shows the huge impact of your early choices. It's massive. And the one on the right, that's the tiny cost of making those choices. Your power to change the outcome is at its absolute peak when your spending is at its rock bottom. And believe me, getting this wrong can be a real disaster. If you try to make a huge change late in the game, like deciding you actually want a 2-story house after the detailed plans for a bungalow are already done, you are in for a world of pain. You've got to go all the way back to square one, causing huge delays and just burning through money. Okay, so now let's scale this whole idea way, way up. Because this isn't just about personal projects. This exact same logic is what engineers and top execs use to make billion-dollar decisions every single day. Just picture it. You're in charge of strategy at some huge company. Where do you put your money for the next few years? Do you expand a factory, build a new one from scratch, pivot to a totally new sustainable product? I mean, the number of options can feel absolutely endless. So how in the world do you sort through all of those options quickly and effectively? Well, you definitely don't try to analyze every single one in perfect detail. That would take forever. Instead, you use a filtering process. You use a funnel. At the very top of that funnel, you might be looking at over 100 different ideas. The first step is to do a quick, cheap pass, using really simple criteria to just immediately get rid of the obvious non-starters. After that first brutal cut, you might be left with just a handful of really promising options. Let's say 5. Now, you can afford to spend a bit more time and, a bit more money to dig into these last few ideas in much greater detail. And you keep doing that until finally a single winner emerges. That's the one that's ready for the big investment. The funnel did its job. So once that one project gets the official go-ahead, it enters a much more formal, much more structured life cycle. It moves from that conceptual phase, which is where our funnel process happened, into basic and then detailed engineering, then onto construction, and finally, years and years of operation. And you guessed it, just like with the house, your ability to really influence the total cost is overwhelmingly packed into that very first conceptual stage. All of this really boils down to one last, super critical trade-off that every engineer and project manager has to wrestle with, and that is the price of precision. This table shows you exactly what that trade-off looks like. See, back in that early conceptual phase, the engineering cost is super low, but your budget estimate is, it's pretty rough. It could be off by as much as 40%, either way. To get a really precise, accurate number, you'd have to do all the detailed engineering, and that is incredibly expensive. And this leads to what might be the most backward-sounding insight of all. The biggest go or no-go investment decisions are purposefully made when uncertainty is at its absolute highest. It seems crazy risky, but it's the only way to avoid spending a fortune just to evaluate an idea that might not even be worth it in the first place.
So why do it this way? Because this whole approach, this idea of embracing uncertainty early on, is the single best way to evaluate a ton of different options effectively and fast. It's not about making perfect choices late, it's about making smart choices early.
So, there you have it. This cost paradox governs everything from planning a vacation to building a factory. It forces us to put the most thought and the most energy into our earliest, cheapest decisions. And that leaves us with one final thought. Knowing this, how might it change the way you approach the next big project in your own life?